right. Hello, everybody. It is the Drinker here. This is happy hour number 55 now. Gosh, we had a big long gap where we didn't do any happy hours for quite a long time, and now we're starting to get back into it now. So it's good to be doing it again. And I'm looking forward to chatting about this movie tonight. Well, I'm joined by the critical doggos. Smokey's over there, Lara's over there. You know, you're going to get the same level of enthusiasm and energy from them that you normally do. But yeah, people were asking to have them on screen again, so there they are, lurking in the background, fast asleep. So anyway, I wanted to bring together the team that we're going to be doing to tackle this movie tonight. And our first guest tonight is one of my excellent mods who's been with us since the very beginning and who was kind of instrumental in putting this together actually this evening. So welcome everybody to Lance from the Outcast Creative. Good to have you back, my friend.
Great to be here. Sorry, my voice is a little bit gravelly. I'm suffering from the lurgies that are going around right now. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm really passionate about history. So this is right up my street. And Paul's a good friend of mine as well. So it's all good.
Nice one, man. Thank you for coming in. And yeah, don't worry about the gravelly voice. It gives you an air of authority. So it's perfect.
I'll remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, our next guest, we couldn't tackle a historical topic without bringing the history bro back in. He's an expert in all things Napoleonic. So welcome back to the I was going to say the open bar.
Hey.
It's not the open bar this time. It's happy hour. I'm getting confused already and I'm not even drunk yet. Welcome back, man.
Thanks for having me, Drinker. Really appreciate it, as always. And I already covered this a little bit on the lotuseaters.com podcast. Just a wee bit of a shill there. But really, thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of the Napoleonic era, so always happy to talk about it.
Yeah. No, we spent a good bit of time talking about Waterloo, the 1970 movie, and it was great fun.
That's a great film, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't do my review of Napoleon without referencing that. It's great stuff. But yeah, we've also been lucky enough to get, and this is really due to Lance, who happens to know him, that we've got Paul Biddiss, who is a military advisor, man who's had a lot of time in the armed forces and then moved into military advisor roles for movies. And he has done everything from 1917 to Jurassic World, the Jason Bourne movies. He was in The Death of Stalin as well. He worked on that, which makes him an official legend in my book. I love that movie. And yeah, most recently, Napoleon. So welcome to Happy Hour, Paul. Thank you for coming in for this.
Hello, how are you doing? Oh, pleasure to be here.
Slight time delay, but we'll work with it, I think.
Yeah, that's okay. We can do that. And he is currently filming a top secret project. I don't know. Can I even say the name? Am I allowed to do that?
I think we can. It may be a sequel to a film about a Roman. That's all we can say.
Yes, yeah. It does involve suits of armor as well, which are very cool. But
Paul hasn't told us anything because he can't tell us anything. So
exactly, yes. So we will, we will work around that right now. But yeah, welcome on board, Paul. It's great to have you here, man. Thank you.
That's a pleasure.
Nice one. Well, I guess I wanted to start just by getting people's opinions on Napoleon, because I've done my review of it already. It was relatively short. But I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on the movie, you know, how it compares to other films about the sort of Napoleonic period, and I guess what you were hoping for, what you got from the movie, what you didn't, and just really get a sense of where people are at with it. And maybe Lance, would you like to start?
I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie Patton with George C. Scott, but that's a really good biopic about a somewhat controversial American general in World War II. Scott, I think, got an Oscar for it. He certainly got nominated. I think he won it. And I was kind of hoping that Napoleon was going to be the Napoleonic equivalent of that movie. That we were going to get a sense of how and why this man had the strategic ability that he had, how and why he was as popular as he was, combined with a high level of production, military stuff that I always expect to see when Paul's involved in a film, and also amazing production design and costumes that you always get in a Ridley Scott film. And we certainly got some of those things, and the film does look epic, but in terms of dramatic stakes and narrative, it just didn't hold together for me. Now, I know there's a longer cut coming, So I'm kind of, and I know that Ridley wanted to make 2 films as well. He wanted to make 2 films, and Apple said no. He wanted to do a part 1 and a part 2, and that would have made a lot of sense to me. So I'm kind of going to reserve my final judgment until I've seen the cut that he wants us to see, a bit like with Kingdom of Heaven. But this cut, I was quite disappointed. Yes, good things, but you know, there's a lot good in the film, but there's a lot wrong with it too.
Yeah. What about you, History Bro?
Well, I thought it was extraordinarily poor. Obviously, the cinematography was brilliant. I mean, obviously, but the writing, the script, the screenplay was diabolical. It was laughable to me. I mean, I don't know how it got signed off on by a bunch of professional filmmakers. I can go into as much detail as you want, but the dialogue was atrocious, embarrassing. There you go.
Fortunately, Paul was not responsible for writing.
Yeah. I think personally, like rather like Lance was saying, I would be interested to see that 4.5-hour cut, because I think there's so much that's missed out on about his life, and trying to condense his 20+ year military career with all the political stuff that came with it, and all of the strategic planning, and all the incredibly huge complex battles into a 2.5-hour movie with a huge romantic subplot that eats up loads of time as well. It's nigh on impossible. There's just no way they could have done it. I would rather have seen this be a big budget 10-part miniseries. I think that would have been a much easier way to do it. I think you could have got a lot more detail in. Yeah, like I was so excited to see battles like Austerlitz or Borodino or Waterloo on screen, and they're really quick. They're just they're glossed over, really. Like these battles that lasted entire days and that like involved really complex maneuvering of troops and stuff. Like it's all condensed down into just one little engagement, and it's such a shame. I just kind of wanted more of it. Yeah.
Well, you said it in your review actually that it was sort of weighed down by its own. Well, how much it bitten off. I mean, trying to do the whole of Napoleon's military career. I'm going to say a lot of the same things I said on Lotus Eaters, but I did a 9-part series on the life of Napoleon, and it was sort of, I don't know, 14, 15, maybe 16 odd hours worth of content. And even that was sort of fairly light touch stuff. Still had to skate over whole things. So it was always going to be extremely difficult to make a 2.5-hour, 3-hour film out of it. So I take that into account. You know, the amount it focused on Josephine was just a not a good idea, in my opinion. But there you go.
I mean, like, I guess, Paul, from your point of view, like, obviously you didn't really have any say in the script or anything like that, but you're the military advisor on it for the battle scenes. So, like, from your point of view, like, what was your level of involvement, and how do you feel the battle scenes were represented on screen? Like, how did you like it?
Obviously, they're not represented historically accurate in the sense of the tactics used, in the sense of the landscape. And as you said, there was so much more to those battles. But the film was always portrayed about 2 people and their relationship. It was never portrayed, although the trailers showed that, it was always about these 2 people, and it was a microscope looking into their relationship and how their relationship affected each other. And that's what it was always about. And I think a lot of people had preconceptions that it was just going to be what, like most Napoleonic films, big sprawling battlefields going on, you know, like you said, snapshots. And it was snapshots. Now, when I came out of I was at the red carpet, I came out and all I felt, you know, I felt a bit, you know, I felt like it was more like an extended trailer, because I know there is so much missing. Not that extended director's cut is going to rectify some of the howlers that are there, or you know, the artistic license that's there, but there is so much missing that stitches a lot of the story together. Yeah. And I think it will make more sense. It was literally going boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I think,
and that's what, you know. Most people felt that. I know that.
Yeah, it's like when he launches his invasion of Russia, and it's literally just one little diary entry that explains why he's doing it. And I thought, you need more than that, man. This is like the turning point is in his entire life. The invasion of Russia.
Again, as I said, this wasn't about battles. This is about 2 people. and it was about their relationship and how they affected each other, and that probably disappoints a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because people want to see, guys want to see war, they want to see carnage, they want to see action, and
Yeah.
and you didn't get that. And let's be honest with us, it is,
I'm not
1917, a lot of guys, just for say 1917, a lot of guys like, I didn't like 1917 because there wasn't enough action in it. Most women loved it because it was about a relationship and guys going from A to B. And it's like, well, there you go. I mean, if you've got the attention span of a Transformer film, go and watch one of those. Yeah. Sometimes it's all about relationships. It's not always about action.
I think so. I think it would have been interesting, right? Because I totally get this idea that it was about their relationship, and it's almost like a romance story, an epic, tragic romance, because they're forced to separate and so on. I think if you're going to do that, you could almost just tell it from her perspective and not even make it Napoleon. It's almost like Josephine's story, because really that's where the narrative wants to go. Yeah, because you get to a point where she's kind of like written out of the history books. Like once they've divorced, she doesn't really do anything significant, but she's still kind of hanging around in the movie. And it's like the script doesn't quite know what to do with her. And I just thought this would have been a perfect way to just focus on her, and just make the film about her. But obviously, from a marketing point of view, that's going to be a tough sell because people want a Napoleon movie. They want to see him like be a general and like take control of Europe and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of marketing involved in it because they have got to see like what's going to put bums on seats. Napoleon's going to probably put more bums than what Josephine would put bums on seats. Who knows? I out way above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But like I say, there is a lot more about Josephine in that cut. But I know there's a lot of action scenes that I'm hoping will make that cut as well because there's so much missing. And some relevant parts of history, of Napoleon's history that's missing, and Josephine's history that's missing. I mean, the original script, when I first saw it, it started from when he was a boy having a snowball fight.
Right.
Then it got cut. And then there was lots of things that got cut, and Ridley wanted more battles. It got cut because, believe it or not, even though Ridley Scott is Ridley Scott, there is still someone holding the money chain above him. And so, his hands are tied to some degree.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that he didn't have like complete creative control on this film, did he? There was a lot of benchmarks or limitations put upon him. I mean, I know for a fact that he wanted to include at least the farmhouse or Huguemont in Waterloo, and Apple said no. They wouldn't give him the time or the extra money to shoot that segment. So
that is so fucking frustrating because it's like it boils the whole Battle of Waterloo down to just one little charge.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well, we've sent our infantry in, like send the cavalry in like directly over them, and they'll just ride over their own men somehow and not kill them all. And then like fuck it, we'll just send the Imperial Guard in as well. And I just wanted more because it makes, for people who aren't familiar with this time period, it makes Napoleonic battles seem dumb. It makes it seem like it's just a case of just throwing all your men at the enemy and just hoping that you've got more than they do. And it's like, there was so much maneuvering, there was so much careful allocation of resources and positioning of troops and stuff that you don't get a sense of because it has to move so quickly, and it's frustrating,
I think, Drinker, you
the only way you're ever going to get that.
Oh, sorry.
Go on, say again. Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think Drinker hit the nail on the head when he said the film could have been called Josephine, or at least Napoleon and Josephine, if it was sold as you say, Paul, the whole idea, the raison d'etre of the entire screenplay was to be about their relationship. Then okay, or more, be more fair enough at least. But as it was sold as, the trailer I saw was the bit about Austerlitz. You think you're just getting a straight up Napoleon biography type film. And then you're surprised to see that half of it probably is about Josephine. The thing that struck me, that even the other half that is about the politics and the battles, there were just glaring omissions. Like, for example, there was nothing at all, not even in passing, about the Peninsular War. Battle of Leipzig was completely cut out. I don't know if that will be in the extended version or anything.
He tried to get that in.
Really? Because as a history nerd, I get it, but at least have it mentioned.
You would be surprised how he was trying his hardest, even to see if he could get. Well, could we just try and do this? Let's try. And he tries to slip things in. He tries to get stuff in, and he tries to suggest it. And then you've got the guy budgets, and straight away budgets. That's one of the.
That's quite a statement about the state of how things are being produced today. When a filmmaker of Ridley Scott's reputation and track record has still got producers at his level saying, no, you can't include that. No, you can't include that. And that was happening throughout the production, I believe, as well. It was from start to finish. That was
one thing. One thing you got to bear in mind is that we were still under COVID restrictions in the film industry. So if you imagine how long it takes for a crew of up to around about 2,000 people to all get tested daily.
Yeah.
And all your foreground unit
goes to one side. Yeah, everyone had to be tested daily.
So this would have been a couple of years ago that they were filming this.
It was in
was it a couple of years ago, like maybe 2021, that they were doing this?
No, because of Ridley, 80 at the time, 84. We were still under, and there was a lot of other productions still, even though COVID and in the UK, everything had been dropped. When you was on set, you tested the lot. You still was under those, it was when was it? 2000, was it 2002, wasn't it? Yeah, it was only, last year. So it was only last year.
2022,
22.
Okay. Yeah. Last year was filming it, and we was under strict COVID precautions. I finished that film. I went to Barcelona to do, what was it? Who's Erin Carter? Did stuff on Erin Carter. We was doing COVID. I went from there to Turkey to do Bakra, the Malaysian Black Hawk Down. We were still doing COVID. So it was still going on.
And is that voluntary or is that just mandatory across the whole industry?
At the time, it was mandatory. When I was training my first 500, I was having to train them in a COVID environment on set. All the COVID protocols, we had COVID marshals, everything. So we had, and normally a normal film takes 1 million out, and it all went to COVID.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't understand that we were working in a COVID environment as well. So it's a lot of money being taken out of the budget just for that.
Can I ask Paul a question? Or either, actually, if anyone knows the answer, but I suspect Paul might know the answer. So it's a Scott-free Productions film. It's Ridley Scott's thing, And as a director, I imagine, and as it's his production, he gets to sort of pick the writer and the screenwriter and sign off on it and all that sort of thing. But then at what point is it? Is it the editors in post-production, or is it while it's going on that producers from the studio, I can't remember what it was, Columbia? Was it Columbia? At what point, and who exactly really is it that says, no, you can't do that? Ridley. So Ridley, no, that's not going to be in the final. Like, how does that work, really?
I can't say that. I can't answer that question, but I do know that there are people higher up. There's always someone higher up who is providing this money, and everything is, and Lance will tell you, everything is budgeted. How many extras you can have are budgeted. So he wanted 1,000 extras for Waterloo. No, you get 500.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. There'll be a line producer on set, and that's a relatively new credit, by the way. If you go back about 15, 20 years, you won't see the credit of line producer in film production. And there would always be one producer who would be hands-on. The line producer's job is to make sure that the budget is adhered to, basically. And they're in constant communication with the production manager. And their job is to keep an eye on the budget, the spending, and liaise direct back to the studio. And on a production like this, you probably would have had more than one line producer. And then on a production like this, because of the egos involved, you're probably also going to have some other producers come on set and visit anyway, because, they'd love to be in Malta for a couple of weeks on
I bet they would.
Trust me. So, and they're going to be there wielding their mighty sword saying, no, you can't spend any more of that because 50K could go on my salary. So
It's funny though, because like Ridley Scott gives the impression of a guy, and he's like 85 years old, so what does he care at this point?
He's 86 now.
Yeah, like he gives the impression of a guy who's just like, I've done it, I've got the t-shirt, and like if you're going to criticize me, I don't give a shit because I'm old as fuck and like I can just do what I want. And like it was the same when it came to criticism of Napoleon from like the French media. A lot of French people saying like this misrepresents Napoleon. It does a real disservice to him. They're not entirely wrong, but like his response was literally, I don't give a fuck. Go away. Like, you're French, you hate yourselves. Like, why should I care? Like, if you hate my movie.
And how many headlines did it make?
Yep. That is true.
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
I wonder, so the thing becomes sort of the overarching artistic vision, or the story, the ability to tell a story, to craft a narrative, then becomes something born out of committee, essentially. And isn't it? It seems crazy to me that these people would spend so much money, sink so much time and effort and money into a project, only to sort of cut the legs out from under the sort of the artistic genius of Ridley Scott or something. Why would you? Why would you damage the thing? You know.
Yeah, there's so many different variables that people that, you know, they comment on these and they really don't have a clue on what works. So, for example, Waterloo, he's got a set amount of time to film Waterloo in this area that he's been given. And that area first has to be cleared by health and safety. It has to be cleared by the horse master that is safe. So they go scouting, they look for various places. They see a place that they really like that's very similar to Waterloo, but then you'll get health and safety, you'll get the horse master, you get the person that owns it, and they all, before you know it, the person that owns it just put the prices up. The health and safety are saying, well, we can't do this because of power lines or something. And then you've got, you know, the horse master saying, well, we can't use this because it's going to break the horses. You get so many different things that start then putting blocks on what you want to do. And then when you do find a piece of land, that land potentially is then going to be used by another production company. And also you need to be in Malta by a certain time, because you can only use Ricasili between here and here, because another production's coming in. Malta, as you probably know, is used by so many different productions.
Yeah.
So you think is time driven as well as financially driven, which then gives you a certain amount of time to get what you need out, and you've got to move on to the next. And you can't just say, oh, let's revisit it again because we didn't exactly get that right. We've got to move on now. We've done it. We've got to deal with it. Now let's move on. Thing is with Ridley, he works with 10, 15 cameras. Not many directors do that. And he normally will get that take and done. He will get this big action scene done, and then he'll move on to the next section. But there's lots of constraints, you know, armory, weapon safety, you know, logistics, getting 500 men fed, as well as the 2,000 crew that's on sets. There's so many different things that are going on these sets.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for people to sit there watching, go, I would have done this and I would have done that. But I tell you what, if I gave you 200 million and said, go make a film, would you be able to do it?
I mean, I would break every health and safety rule going, but yeah, yeah, probably. This is why they were so lucky when they done Waterloo, because it's like, fuck it, we'll film it in the Soviet Union. We don't have to worry about health and safety, and we'll just requisition 10,000 conscripts to be in our movie. So it's like, yeah, fine, perfect. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Then
they just had to worry about stopping filming to allow the invasion of Czechoslovakia, from what I remember.
Yeah.
Let the Russian army come through the set for an hour or two, and then carry on filming.
There weren't no T-34s in Waterloo, as far as I remember. But yeah, they probably had to remove them.
There's one thing I'd say, like, you know, it's really interesting, Paul, all the things you're saying, absolutely, and like the logistics of, you know, making thousands of people work together and getting the shot and the time and the money and all that sort of thing. But then there's questions like, for example, the dialogue, and I know obviously you had absolutely nothing to do with that, but you know, there's a few lines in that where, you know, it's not really about money or time exactly. It was the writing. The writing was poor. You know, like there was one line in it, I've seen more than one person pick it out, where Napoleon's railing against some British, saying, I think you're great because you've got boats. There's another bit when they're on the retreat from... I'm sorry, go on, Paul. Go on.
Yeah, it's not always about the writing. Sometimes it's about the actors and what they feel they want to say in improvisation. So I don't remember actually seeing that line in the script, to be honest.
Right. If Joaquin Phoenix improvised that, then I just think, damn, man, he should.
Sometimes there is. I'm not going to say he did, but there is sometimes an actor will, and when you're working with actors, especially actors of that caliber, they like to really think about, I think he would do this, and I think he would, and it's sometimes down to their interpretation on what they think or what they want to say, and sometimes they'll say something that's funny, and maybe we'll go, yeah, that's quite funny. I mean, there's a scene that I remember him liking when we was in Greenwich, when when he gets his brother to point the sword at him, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, I will kill my own brother," blah blah blah, and they take over. They hold all the guys hostage. I can't remember the whole scene itself, but he goes, "Oh, that's funny. Let's do that. Let's keep that in." So sometimes you just wanted a bit of comedy, and sometimes you get the script is interpreted by someone, and they say something themselves. I think the Pork Chop one was an interpretation by Joaquin. So yeah, I mean, sometimes these things are out of your control. An actor's going to do what he's going to do. That's it.
I think it's kind of interesting as well, because there's quite an interesting quote from Joaquin Phoenix where he said, like, I had no idea what to bring to this movie. Like, I went to Ridley Scott just like 2 weeks before we were supposed to start shooting, and I said, I've got no idea what to do with this character, and we had to sit down and work it out. And I just thought, holy shit, man, like that's very telling, and it kind of explains a lot, actually, because Napoleon in this film is all over the place in terms of his personality, in terms of his behavior. Sometimes he's like this stoic, composed general who's just watching stony faced as this big intricate battle plays out. Other times he's like screaming and shouting at people when things have gone wrong, and then other times he's like crying his eyes out in front of Josephine. And it's like he's just trying to do a little bit of everything, and it's weird. There's no consistent through line for him, and it's just.
I mean, I get what he was trying to do. He was trying to present different sides to this person as he would be with different people, which is what we're all like as human beings. We all have different chemistry with different people, and how you behave in a personal situation and a professional situation are very different. But I know what you mean. It kind of lacked an overall cohesion and consistency for you to believe that this is the same person we're seeing, even if it is different sides to the same person.
I didn't get a strong sense of who this Napoleon was.
There wasn't continuity. There wasn't continuity.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem. Like the point where he's forced to abdicate, right? He just kind of signs his name and he just says, "Oh, you want me to abdicate? Okay, I will. Fine." And it's like he doesn't give a shit. Like, I don't feel like the real Napoleon would have acted like that when he was faced with the abdication ultimatum. And like, well, you saw it in Waterloo. Like Rod Steiger's obviously like ranting and raving about like how he's been betrayed and he's not going to do it and stuff. You got something from him then. You saw what was important to that character. But with this guy, it's like suddenly he doesn't care, and I just didn't buy it. And I'm not sure why they went down that road. I
guess it's the craft of characterization, and if we could all do that, perhaps we'd all be millionaire novelists or something. It's not an easy thing to do, but Drinker, I was on a stream with you a while ago now, and we were talking about some of our favorite war films, and I said The Duelists was one of my favorite films of all times, and it's barely a war film. The Napoleonic era is just really the backdrop to that film, because the characters in it, the characterization is very, very well done. Perhaps a great example might be Ripley in the Alien and Aliens films. But this Napoleon, there didn't seem even to be an attempt to sort of craft and mold and move his character on. Right at the beginning at Toulon, there was a bit where he looks scared, or he looks a bit scared at the fighting. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll get a bit of insight, a bit of like his human side. And then you ended up getting none of it. What they did a few times, more than once, is they had Joaquin Phoenix just sort of sniggering. Do you remember that? More than once, something big happens, and his reaction, Napoleon's reaction, is to sort of just snigger, almost with indifference. And it's just, like I say, they almost he hadn't tried really, or the screenwriter hadn't really tried to do much characterization. Why is Napoleon like that? We don't get anything like that, do we?
I think as well, like it doesn't really tackle the fact that he towards the end was dying of stomach cancer. Because like at Waterloo, part of the reason he wasn't able to command the battle properly is like he was crippled with stomach pain and he had to keep retiring to his to the farmhouse. And you didn't really get any of that. And instead the movie shows him charging into battle and actually fighting at Waterloo. And I just thought, what the fuck? This guy was like 46 years old. He was dying of stomach cancer. And if he'd even tried to do something like that in a battle at that point in his life, like tried to like charge into combat, he would have been physically removed from the battlefield, because if he got himself killed, that would have been it. The entire army would have collapsed around him. And I just thought, why did you just put that in? There was no need for that. Like, it was more important to show him commanding the battle and it falling apart around him, despite his best efforts. He didn't need to be there swinging a sword.
Well, for me, there was a bit there where they showed a sniper asking the Duke of Wellington whether he was, and we know. I'd love to have your insights on that point in a moment. There's a real anecdote where it wasn't a rifleman; it was
it was a cannon. It was
so that's very loosely based on a real event. But then they showed that rifleman taking a shot at Napoleon right at the end, and the bullet sort of goes through Napoleon's hat.
Yeah.
And, for me, that was sort of. I'd really love to hear what Paul thinks about all of that. But for me, that was getting into the realm of cringe at that point.
Well, he borrowed Sean Bean's rifle from Sharp. That's why it was possible.
Well, Wellington said he would fucking shoot the guy if he tried to take a pot shot at Napoleon, and he just done it anyway. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's. Yeah, there's quite a few people when we heard there was going to be this scope Baker rifle. The armourers, myself, quite a few people said, look, there wasn't a scoped or recorded scoped Baker rifle. It just didn't exist. I mean, the first, what I say, recorded scoped weapon was 50 years down the line. I think it's around about 1853 or 54. That's when the first scoped or recorded scope rifle. So
because
we mentioned
you would need like a breech loading rifle as well with a rifled barrel to be able to fight to fire with any degree of accuracy. Surely, like a musket ain't going to do that.
However, I sort of I thought he wanted it. He just wanted to show that image. I mean, personally, I would have had an officer with a telescope just looking through and just saying, look, he's in range of cannon range, and that would have done the job. But that's what he wanted to do. And you can only vocalize it, whether they take it or not. Then that's what advising is. You try and do your best. You try and offer suggestions, but if the director's mind is set, that's it. That's going to happen, and no one's going to change that person's mind. And so you just have to deal with it and suck it up and know that you're going to get. I'm trying to keep my language, watch my language, but you're going to get it. And I remember watching it, I'm going to really get ripped to pieces for this, even though it's not my fault. But I've got big shoulders, I'm thick-skinned. And anyone wants to say it to my face, I've got one of these as well. Yeah, it's funny. No one ever says these things to my face. They're quick on the internet, but never say it to my face.
I mean, a military vet, they're probably not going to, man.
Comfort blanket. I call it my comfort blanket, and I've had many comfort blankets. So you ever watch that Me, Myself, and Irene when the woman pushes in front of him with the trolley? The Hank moment. I have Hank moments. Right, a couple of my mates call me Hank sometimes. When I see things like that and I try to get it changed, and I'm told no, I turn into Hank for about a second, and then I'll have to go back to Charlie again because I've got to focus. And I look at some anecdotes I tell myself to say, okay, this could have happened at some point, not at Waterloo, there's nothing documented, but a thing that soldiers do through the ages, cavemen, right the way through the ages, we improvise and we try to
personalize kit.
Try to personalize kit.
Yeah.
But now there's nothing to say that maybe some rifleman or anyone just found a scope and thought, I'm not saying this happened at Waterloo. But what I'm saying is there's nothing to say that someone went, oh, let's attach this and see what happens. It's never going to hit anything. But he might have just seen what happened. We don't know. Now, I've got an anecdote. We were doing what I call a tailor operation or a tailor exercise tactical air land from a C-130, and we was in 110 Land Rovers. We didn't have crew mounted weapons or pintle mounts to put a Milan anti-tank weapon in. But they wanted us to do this because they had some politicians watching at Manchester Airport. And so we had to improvise. And we stripped the Land Rover, and we got 3 air bottle boxes, and they're big thick boxes, put them in the middle, strapped them all down, put some cam net over them to disguise that they were air bottle boxes in the back of a Land Rover. Then we put the Milan anti-tank weapon on the top, then strapped the legs to the air bottle boxes and the pinion points. And all of a sudden, we've got this crew served weapon coming out the back of a C-130, skidding to the end of the runway, providing anti-tank support while the Herc turns around and flies off. All the politicians are going, "Oh, this looks really good," not realising that it's like a couple of air bottle boxes strapped to a Land Rover. And then a couple of years down the line, pintle mounts. So that's what I keep on telling myself. Okay, it's the realms of possibility. Might not work, but someone might have done that at some point. Needless to say, yeah, it's bollocks. There was no scope weapons at all. I just have to deal with it. It's like, I mean, that's one of the things of being a military advisor. As much as you know it's wrong, you've just got to sometimes suck it up and know that there's going to be lots of people that are going to be jumping on the internet going, "I couldn't help but notice." So there you go.
What was it? The same deal when you had like soldiers rising up out of trenches at Waterloo?
Exactly the same.
That's not really how line infantry fought at like Napoleonic battles.
So when I saw the because I saw the storyboards and they'd already been written. Now Ridley draws all his own storyboards. It's really good. Draws everything, but he's got an image in his head. He knows what happened at Waterloo. He knows there was no trenches, but visually he wants to show something rather than just a field. Because he's got a small area that he's got to compact it. So he wanted these, and it wasn't really a trench. It was like more shell scrape, but he wanted that anyway. And I wrote it down in notes, and I just explained, look, there was no time to dig in. The guy, lots of guys were still actually getting into that area before it all kicked off. In the early hours of the morning, it was pissing down with rain, and there was just no time to dig in. And then we vocalized it, and it was just like, well, no, that's what's happening. And by the time it was already dug by the time we got up to the recce and we're looking at it. And I remember looking at the French side and looking at the British side. And again, it was one of those ones where I'm just like trying to poke my eyes out, but it is what it is. Again, you've got the command HQ so close to the front. Again, it is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's out of your hands, and so you just have to make the best of it.
Yeah.
The gabions next to the French cannons, there wasn't no gabions there, and there would have been no means of actually putting that, erecting those defenses.
Can I ask you a question about the shooting of the Austerlitz scene? And maybe Drinker, if you could whack up this image that I've got, just so people can see what we're talking about. I mean, so this is, men falling through the ice and all the rest of it. And I mean, from what I can tell from a production point of view, the snow's fake. Clearly, these are pre-dug pits with, I'm guessing those are not your guys. That would be the core stunt team that would be going.
They're all stunts, yeah.
But the guys running around either side of them I would imagine, would be part of your team. They'd be part of your key unit, your top sort of 40
core 300.
Yeah, that's right. You had a core 300, and then you had a B team, didn't you? You had a second lot on this. So this is this shot in the UK? Because in the background we've got greenery and green and pleasant land there beyond the fake snow. And where was this filmed first of all? And then how many days?
Same place where they shot. Same place as they shot Masters of the Air. It was an airfield. Yeah. Near Abingdon.
How many days was there to shoot this?
I think we had only a week to do.
Wow. For
for
something as big as this,
and it weren't just Austerlitz. We had Austerlitz. We did Borodino and the retreat from. There's some scenes that you haven't seen, but retreat from Russia as well. Yeah. All in that area.
And Waterloo, was that shot in that area as well?
Waterloo was shot in near Didcot.
Can I take a guess that Waterloo was shot in the winter time?
Because we had like rain. Yeah, we had when they were shooting, there was rain. We did have rain, and so you didn't usually need the rain machines and etc. And then all of a sudden we had sideways wind. We had all the seasons. So
I just think it was funny because like the real Waterloo took place in June, and this was clearly like the winter time because all the trees are bare in the background.
Yeah,
it just looks so weird.
I remember during the recce's they were talking all about that as well. They talk about. I mean, I was working on a show only. A TV show, a big TV show actually. I can't say it's Day of the Jackal. Really, really good.
Yeah,
but even then, they're talking about weather and the timeline, and it's going to be. So all these things always get taken into consideration. But again, it is what it is, and it's only so much you can do.
And the battle for Toulon was filmed at Ridley's favourite location in Malta. Here it is for those viewers that don't know about it. This is Fort Ruscoli, which it was an original Napoleonic fort of that era.
Yeah, it's that lovely star shape, isn't it? So,
yeah. And then if you look on the interior of this image, you can actually see a gladiatorial arena there. This might well have been taken when Gladiator was being shot, but the interiors of the fort naturally lend themselves to all that kind of Mediterranean or Roman architecture. You can see you've got a fake facade of a street all built along here, and then they often film all the port stuff down here. So I'm guessing the outside of these walls is where you shot the Toulon siege stuff. Would that be correct?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But I can remember, I can see, it was around this area that you're pointing at,
Yeah, because that was all night shoots, wasn't it?
Yes. So, all night shoots.
So how long did you have on that sequence?
3 days.
Damn, man! I mean, really? these battle sequences.
All that.
7 days here, 3 days there for the scale of and the number of extras and stuff you had.
That would take a normal film. A film with like just the normal amount of cameras would probably take just to do Waterloo 4 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, I did Waterloo for Vanity Fair. That took 2 weeks, and that was only very small. In comparison.
I mean, I know it's
like
doable.
He's got so many cameras on the go, and he's then got to move on. And while he was working on this, he was promoting. Was it the last? Last Jill and Gucci as well. So he's he's prepping for another job. And this job he's putting, so he's completely on the go.
Yeah, the thing that stuck out for me at Toulon, particularly, was when Napoleon gets his horse shot out from under him, because it's so like it comes out of nowhere and it's just really unexpected. But you realize shit like this happened all the time in Napoleonic warfare, like when you had cavalry charges and stuff, and. Like Marshal Ney got like 5 different horses shot out from under him at Waterloo. Like it's just crazy that
I mentioned it, and I think your history, Bob, history bro. Sorry, you're probably you're correct. You might correct me on this, but I remember it was witnessed by British soldiers when one of the horses, he came off the horse and he was so mad that he was smashing a cannon with his sword. And they saw this mad Frenchman just smacking. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've heard that account. Yeah.
That apparently did happen. Yeah.
Ney.
I
was going to say, one of the things was Juno at one point, I think, is mentioned by name, but there's very, very little exploration into his marshals. And although when people do lists of favourite marshals or best, most accomplished marshals, Ney doesn't usually top the list. He's one of my favourites just for pure character. Ney is brilliant, and his story goes all the way up to the restoration of the Bourbons.
They should do a film about him.
He's just a totally mad bastard, wasn't he? Like brave, kind of crazy in the middle of battles, but like he was the guy who led from the front.
Even his own execution.
There's a famous painting of the execution of Ney. There's one thing I'd say though that I thought was really good about the Battle of Waterloo. Obviously. Battle of Waterloo aficionados will be disappointed with all sorts of elements of it, that the Huguenot and the Hay Saint weren't shown, but they did show the squares.
I
was happy with that. I liked that. I thought that was done
That was
quite
my
well.
sleepless night formation.
Well, you get to see them form square quite effectively, and you realize like, oh, this was actually quite a complicated maneuver to do in the middle of a battle, and they did it. What I would have loved to have seen was, because I know once they formed squares and the cavalry were all over the place, the French started to bring up horse-drawn artillery, and like the ones that were within range, they absolutely fucking annihilated them with canister shot. And I think that would have made like again a hugely impactful image. Because there's accounts of like squares where the whole thing was wiped out. Like, yeah, they were killed to the last man and they died in square. And to see that on screen would have been like hugely impactful about the sheer cost of this battle.
It was one of my exercises that I do with the extras to teach them about the dead square. So I'd be going around while they're in square, and I'd be tapping guys on the shoulder, and then they'd be closing in to try and keep the square tight. Closing in, closing in, closing in. By the end of it, you've just got the flag party and just guys laying around in a square, and it would open their eyes a bit and say, "Look, this is reality of what happened. Then guys died, and you're keeping the square tight and tight. Where then you're only left with a flag party, and all your muckers are all dead, but they're in a square."
Did you use some of the same? Did you use some of the same guys from Vanity Fair? Because you've done it before.
No, I've worked with so many extras. There's a lot of guys I've trained from previous jobs, but obviously different eras. But the drill, the way I teach drill is always the same, but it's different as per the era that you teach. But it has to be generic as well, because a lot of the guys. I don't know if you want to go more into the training of it, or I can go into that. But there's a lot of guys I've trained, sir.
The one thing as well, I just was hoping to see when the movie covered Waterloo was the final attack of the Old Guard. Or should I say the Imperial Guard? Because I know it was the Middle Guard who actually did the final attack. But I would have loved to have seen that, because it was kind of hinted at in the film, but it was a little bit glossed over. And I know these guys were fucking badass. Like, they marched through like artillery fire, musket shot and everything, and they broke through like the first two lines of defense at Waterloo, and it was only massed rifle fire at close range that finally stopped them, and that was the turning point of the battle. And I would love to have seen that more. It's like that's surely one of the most pivotal moments in military history, and I just wish the movie had shown us that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you only see a few Old Guard. Again, you did probably, hopefully, be in the cup. You see the guard that's by his tent. Other than that, you really don't see much.
I think there was like one
uniforms they get. Yeah, but I mean, I managed to get skirmishers in ahead of the main assault.
Yep.
And that again, that was a battle just to get that in, because I remember saying, I said, "Oh, why don't we have skirmishers?" Because he wanted to do line, even though I said, "Look, it should have been column." But he wanted to do a line for because
did you get the green jackets, the 95th in there?
Well, you got that. There was a few in there, but again, there was so far and few that I think there was only about four or five, I think. But I mean, it's when you got the costume designer, and they get so many costumes, and I've got to make sure I've got the grenadiers in the right place, and I've got to have our flank companies, and then I've got ADs pulling people out from key positions, and I've got to try and get those back into those positions, because the ADs don't know any better. But I've got the French on one side, and I've got the British on one side, and they're about 1,000 meters apart. I'm on Waterloo one day. I clocked about 30 miles running between bits and pieces, and then getting to the director, and then going back, and then sorting something else he wanted. So you can imagine how chaotic it is. You have to be pretty fit to be a military advisor. So yeah, I mean, and it's a very chaotic process, and with the way Ridley films as well, you get 20 minutes sometimes to sort things out.
You weren't allowed a golf cart to like drive around from one end of the field to the other. One of those little tractor things that people normally
budgets.
Yeah, okay. Oh yeah.
So I mean, when it came to the extras, though, obviously you've got to have a bunch of guys loading and firing Napoleonic muskets. So did you get like military guys for doing that, like who were kind of familiar with firearms anyway, or was it just extras that you had to train yourself?
Extras from scratch. There's a few guys that apply that are military, everyone. So first of all, I had to run a selection process, and that's basically making sure that everybody was physically and mentally robust, because Ridley Scott films are hard work, you know, and it's in all conditions. So, and I got to make sure that those guys don't have any ailments, so any historic injuries that may impede them through the training, because the boot camps are fairly hard. I'm training them in infantry, I'm training them in artillery, and I need to have, you know, I haven't got a lot of time to do that. And I've literally got to teach them. Like, there's some guys that have never touched a musket before, yet let alone marched, you know, in step. Not even thinking about getting them, teaching them how to form line, how to form line, column to line and line to column, and then, you know, column to square. I got these guys. I put a video out. I don't know if you've seen it. Just a small video of some of the training.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So I do a selection process first, to get the best guys. And no disrespect to reenactors, lots of reenactors wanted to apply. As soon as they found out there was a fitness test, none of them wanted to be involved in it. So it's like, and I had loads of them complaining, like, and sending me emails to my Facebook page, my company Facebook page, complaining that, oh, they never did fitness in Napoleonic times. They never did fitness. And I'm like, well, that's because they didn't have cars and they didn't have what we have now. They were naturally fit. They were farmhands, you know, they were fit and they had to be fit. And, you know, and I've got a lot of respect for reenactors because they keep history alive. But let's face it, some of them are quite well fed and they're not very fit. And I've got to make sure I've got guys who can fit in the uniforms. And if I've got one guy out of 500 who can't keep up, it's going to spoil the shot. So I've got to make sure everyone is at the same fitness level. And also they can take instructions and work with them and not go complaining and saying, oh, well, we do it like this and we do this as well. Because although you've got the manuals at the time, I can't use every single drill. I can't teach every single drill in that manual because it's irrelevant, because I need to get what's relevant out of the manual and what an extra can learn and understand and keep in there, and carry it out. So that's the reason why we have boot camps, so that we can make sure that we have a large body of men and we've got our best guys, that when I put them in the field, and if Ridley says I want them to form square, I've just got to shout form square, reaction to cavalry, and bang, they do it. And they did that in one take, by the way.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
Do you mind if
that's 100 horses steaming towards them, loaded muskets. I had to teach everyone, myself, the armourers, we had to teach everyone about, obviously, weapon safety, because we was in a rust environment still and everyone was very cagey about weapons.
Yeah.
We're loading black powder, and we had to teach everyone about the importance about even like not having the barrel in the ground when they're resting, because obviously foreign objects can get into the barrel, you know, not leaving the weapon laying around and protecting the weapon. And we would have that, we'd run a process where we would test who was safe with muskets. And then once we got the best guys who were safe with muskets, we would then have a process for where they would come forward out of the ranks, and then they would be loaded by the armourers. And that takes a long time as well to get that done. It takes a long time to load, say, 200 muskets safely. And then those guys would then be put back into their formations, and they would be given numbers that they would fire. And they would have to hear these numbers and they would fire on those numbers. So not obviously the regulations on how they would fire by platoon or section, can't do that. We have to make sure safety, and we know whose number is fired. And then once we film cut, or once we say cut, we then got to extract those guys forward. And then if anyone's had a misfire, we've got to check it and make sure that all those weapons are clear. So it's a long drawn out process, just firing muskets. Yeah. So, I mean, like I say, my boot camps, the first week, 250, the second week, another 250. The third week, I have the best 300 that do advanced training, cannon training. I've also got 100 stunts to train. That's just the UK. Once I got to Malta, I had to do it all again.
Yeah.
So, and we had COVID as well in the way of battle.
So that sort of thing just always impresses me, that like the process of loading and firing a musket is hard enough to do when it's just you standing by yourself. But if you're doing it like 50 yards from the enemy who are shooting back at you, you can't imagine what it must have been like to try and actually do that in the middle of a battle. That must have been nerves of steel.
Yeah, and all the guys were being taught how to, recycle, so how to play actors up there, going back into reloading. So, because I said it's important. Unlike Waterloo in 1977, all the Russians, they just go pew pew, and you never see them reload. Just like the exploding cannonballs.
Do you mind if I ask? Do you mind if I ask, Paul, if it's not too impertinent or it's not too personal? I'll just be interested to know. Someone mentioned you've got a background in the services. Is it? Yeah. Can I ask, like, what were you in? What did you do? I
was a parachute regiment soldier. That's all you need to know.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm not a historian. I never pretend to be a historian. I was also a private investigator, so I'm very good at looking at data and extracting what is important. And I was a bodyguard as well.
All right. Cool. Well, the parachute regiment, you can't sniff at that, certainly. One thing I wanted to say...
there's a few people that think, he's a para. How can you do that?
What? Really?
There's a few little kids like coming out going, hang on, how can he do that? He's a para.
Well,
he's not got a degree. And they're like, I don't even bother answering them. I just laugh at it.
Right. You're just sitting there like, I could break you in half, motherfucker.
Bloody hell.
It's quite amusing, some of the stuff you see coming out, but at the end of the day, it's social media. Opinions are like arseholes, and everyone's got one.
I mean, we should add here that you're not the historical advisor on the film. There were two of them, and you were the military historical advisor.
I know there's a few very intelligent people that have made the assumption that I was the historical advisor. I don't get that, but there you go.
I think the Guardian newspaper was one of them, wasn't it?
Well, do you know what? That they completely misquoted me. By saying the headline was, what was it? The headline was that I was accusing historians of falling for Napoleon's lies, which is not what I said. What I did say is that Napoleon, like most commanders in not only Napoleonic wars, but even modern day, bluff their statistics in war.
Yeah.
People always say, because it's all to do with psychological warfare, to your enemy to say we killed more guys than you, and so we took more planes and we took more boats out, and from that they got a byline, and also said that apparently I said that Napoleon took more ships during a naval battle, which I thought, no, I never said that. But anyway, there you go. It is, that's the press for you. But what I did say is that Napoleon was a good bluffer. And he was, he got where he was by sometimes bluffing his battle statistics and saying that he did this, and these generals were not very good, and he was very good, but he wasn't the only one. Wellington did it. Most commanders did that, and that's what I said. Nah,
imagine modern day journalists misrepresenting people for clicks. I mean, who would have thought?
How dare it? I mean, look what's going on at the moment, and we obviously don't want to go too much into politics, but both sides are doing the same, and they're using social media as a battleground as well.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Like Napoleon himself actually knew about this stuff, because he famously said, "I fear a hostile headline more than I fear an entire regiment of enemy snipers or riflemen or whatever."
Yeah. Well, he knew who spies were, and he would deliberately give them misinformation and let them carry it off. So, and I've obviously a lot of stuff with intelligence, and I've done a lot of stuff with that, and counterintelligence and giving bluff information, knowing it's being carried off. That, again, that's been done through the ages as well. He was a very intelligent man. He knew what he was doing.
Well, I mean, speaking of misrepresentation and propaganda, like one of the things that made me laugh about this movie is Napoleon, once again, is portrayed as being really short compared to everyone else. And this is one of those things that's just gone throughout history, and it's so wrong. Like it all stemmed back from, like, the French had a different system of measurement
Metrics
for feet and inches. Yeah, so like a French inch was like slightly more than a normal inch, and so They reported his height as 5'2". In reality, he was more like 5'7", which was about average height for the time period. The British press got a hold of that, and they always portrayed him as being short. He was like really small compared to everyone else, which wasn't the case at all. But even this movie does it. He's always I don't know what they did to Joaquin Phoenix to make him look shorter than everyone, whether they had him just like on his knees or something, or in like a trench, but he's always
to be honest,
smaller.
I never even noticed. I never even noticed myself, to be honest.
Yeah. Like whenever he stood next to someone, they're always bigger than him. And it's just like that whole Napoleon was short thing. And it makes me laugh because it's like, again, that like perception of him throughout history. It's never been lost.
Yeah.
It was definitely the case that Napoleon would just straight up lie about numbers and what had happened in battles to send information back to Paris for the newspapers. He did it loads, in fact, particularly news that was coming out of Spain, out of the Peninsular War. But one thing I did want to ask you guys about, and it's not really about the military side exactly, so not using Paul's inside knowledge exactly on this one, but I did want to. It was one bit that really sort of stuck in my craw a bit. It was when Moscow is burnt down. That moment when Napoleon realizes that his sort of grand stratagem against Alexander has been foiled there. Basically, it's just a massive turning point in history. I know everyone has got their own little thing that they liked or disliked or something, but for me, that was the one moment in the film where I was sort of truly shocked. Really, I was shocked that they showed him just taking his hat, putting it over his face, and screaming in exasperation into his hat. And then they just cut away and they moved on with the narrative. I wonder if what you guys thought when you saw that bit of the film, whether it's just me that I've picked that out sort of weirdly, or whether you guys it struck a nerve with you guys, that particular bit.
It looked cool. It was an incredibly powerful visual image where he comes out of the palace in the middle of the night. He's been woken up by like the sound of fire or whatever, the smell of it.
There's the
and
glow
then he just
in
walks inside. The whole of Moscow is aflame around him. Like, it's visually incredible to look at.
That was Blenheim Palace.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
in the UK.
It's just quite handy because it was just around the corner from where I live.
And Greenwich doubled for the streets of Paris, didn't it? The Greenwich in London.
Well, they managed to make it look suitably bleak and imperialistic Russian for Moscow. So it looked good. It looked impressive.
I saw that 4-parter that French television made. It was like a Napoleon biopic. I'm sure History Bro must have seen it. And you've got a very, very similar scene in that. But there's lots of shots of Russians kind of pushing big bales of sticks up against buildings and then setting them on fire. And I feel like I got a more realistic sense of actually what happened in that version. This was all about strong visual elements, which is very Ridley's thing. But
I thought Moscow was burned before they got there. So they arrived at Moscow and then found that the place was already devastated, rather than like they got there and they set up camp and then like at some point like someone set the city on fire. I could be wrong, but like that was my understanding.
I believe that is the case. Yeah, they on their way out. But for me, it felt like one of the opportunities where it would be really kind of weird. It would be odd not to use that as some sort of window into, if not Napoleon's psyche, at least his emotions, more than just a second or two of him screaming in exasperation, or even a little bit of dialogue about how everything's changed now. But
he does say I never thought he would have the courage to do it. Like he's talking about Tsar Alexander, saying I never thought he would burn his own city to stop me. So there's a tiny little bit there.
There might be something else you might see.
Okay. I wish we got more of Borodino as well, because that was such an interesting battle. That was, correct me if I'm wrong, History Bro, that was the single largest battle in the whole history of the Napoleonic Wars. That was 250,000 men at least involved in a single day of fighting.
Probably should have cut Borodino from War and Peace and stuck that in.
Yeah.
The BBC War and Peace.
It was an interesting one as well, because it was where Napoleon's tactical genius started to fail him, because Whereas before, like Austerlitz and so on, he'd really employed the terrain. He thought carefully about his battle plan. His whole plan at Borodino was pretty much, I'm just going to fucking hammer them with sheer military force, like hit them with artillery, frontal assaults with infantry, and that's how I'm going to win. And I think people were suggesting that even back then he was starting to succumb to the effects of ill health, and he just didn't have the energy to plan like complex battles by that point, and that's why Borodino was so costly in terms of French casualties.
Yeah,
but again,
damn the man, he's a mere pounder after all.
Yeah, I mean, he loves his artillery, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Ridley. I mean, I sort of went in depth with Joachim about artillery and everything about it and the effects of all the different munitions. But Ridley does mention in an interview that there's quite an important element that he cut out because he felt, or whether he said that he felt that it might have taken distracted away from the story that they wanted to show. So his piles, or whatever his head, his whatever he had, his arse was bleeding. He showed that quite a bit, but obviously they cut it all out. Now whether that goes in.
That fucked him up at Waterloo as well, because he literally couldn't sit in his horse to see the battlefield.
They showed things. I mean, I can't say too much, but yeah, there was a lot filmed about that.
One thing I
really mentioned.
Maybe we'll get all of that in the longer cut. Who knows?
I hope so. One thing I did just want to say is that Borodino was incredibly bloody and a giant battle, but it was surpassed in terms of sheer size by Leipzig. Now I mentioned this right at the beginning, and hopefully Paul hinted that we might get something on that in the later cuts. But for me, they had a very quick montage of the retreat from Moscow in the winter of 1812-13, and then it cut straight to his abdication. And again, that was one of the moments where I sort of couldn't believe my eyes, because obviously you then realise we're not going to see anything on Leipzig. And, the battle of the emperors, truly giant. Now it lasted more than a day, or was it even 3 days? Leipzig, fantastically. I don't think that battle was surpassed until World War One. So to miss it out, because I can see from a screenwriter's point of view or from a narrative point of view, maybe you want to just completely omit the Peninsular War because it's just too difficult. You've only got 2.5, 3 hours to play with. I could see the artistic, the narrative decision there. Let's just not mention Spain. Okay, but Leipzig, I mean, well, they did.
I think what you'll find, I think no one's ever going to be happy. Because you can see everyone say, "Oh, why don't they do this? Why don't they show that? Why don't they show that?" I mean, no one's ever going to be happy, and there's always going to be winners and losers as far as what you want to see and what you don't see. And so I think it boils down to that. There's only so much you can fit. I know that Ridley wanted to put more in. As I said before, sometimes those decisions are made. No, we can't. And there's even if it was just a quick, he did this and then he did that. That is the nature of filming. Unfortunately, that's what happens. And if you want a good battle, then you have to dedicate a film just to a battle.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
The problem is that historically, when you just have films about just one battle, they don't necessarily do well in the picture in the theaters. They don't normally pull the money. And that's what makes films. And if the distributor and all the other people think, well, Waterloo 1977, it didn't do well. It's a good film, but it didn't do well. And the only way you can only way you can show, like you said, at Waterloo, to show the grandeur of it, to show the maneuver, all the bells and whistles and everything, you'd have to dedicate a movie to that war or that battle. That's the only way you'll ever get around that. Now, maybe a certain Netflix series might do that. I don't know.
Is that right that the 70s? Sorry, is that right that the 70s Waterloo film didn't do very well at the box office? I've never actually looked at how well it did at the box office.
No, it massively bombed. It massively bombed.
Yeah, because it came out. It came out at a time when war films were very much going out of fashion. And,
I think because up until that point it had been World War II movies for the most part.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Where Eagles Dare and stuff like that. And
yeah, so the 1970 film, let's see, it had a budget of 12 million. How did they do that on 12 million? Like, I know obviously
well,
it's more in today's money, but like still,
Russian slave labor is the answer to that question. I think you'll find.
Yeah,
you'll find all the extras were they were voluntold.
You know what's
Being
interesting?
voluntold, not volunteered.
Here's the thing, right? Okay. So it failed to recoup its cost, so it didn't even make 12 million back at the box office. It led to the cancellation of Stanley Kubrick's biography of Napoleon. Stanley Kubrick was going to do a biography of Napoleon.
Wow.
Oh man, what could have been? Honestly, like, yeah, I totally agree though. Like, I get like these big stodgy like battle movies. They're very much a product of the 50s and the 60s. Like, that's when you got things like the Battle of the Bulge or A Bridge Too Far. All these like classic World War II movies, all that stuff. And yeah, by the 70s they were out of fashion. And it's such a shame that we can't get them, because we need to learn about this stuff. Like, as a culture, as a society, almost, we need to learn about these things that took place, because I think film is such a great medium for educating people about this stuff, and people just aren't going to get it. They're not going to know what was fought over and what was sacrificed at battles like this, and they're just going to forget about it without entertainment to at least give some sort of context to it.
Yeah, I mean, Masters of the Air is probably the next big historical TV show that has got a good chance of garnering a really big audience because of the reputation of the team behind it. They made Band of Brothers and Band of Brothers Pacific, and I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I'm sure Paul is too. I think we both know.
Yeah, I was approached for it. But understandably, Dale Dye got it because he'd done the last three, and it just made sense.
Legend.
So
is he still going? Is he still doing stuff?
Yeah, it's his last one though. It's his last one. He's retiring.
Yeah, holy shit! This guy's a Vietnam vet, isn't he?
Yeah.
Damn.
He's seen a few. He's seen a few hills, you know.
Yeah.
He's one of the Band of Brothers cast stayed with me while they were shooting. He's the guy that fires the bazooka at the tank when it's coming over the hill in episode 3. And he dropped his weapon during drill when Dale Dye was training them. And Dale Dye chewed him out for about like 10 minutes in front of the entire cast, especially because he hadn't been there for most of the training. He'd only like arrived that day. So he hadn't kind of put in the hours. So, yeah, and it showed, you know.
It's funny you should mention Band of Brothers. I rewatched the whole thing about a week ago for about the 5th or 6th time.
Yeah.
And it truly has been, I mean, I'm not going out on a limb there, but if there's anyone watching this who hasn't watched Band of Brothers, you've got to go back. You've got to watch it. It's superb. Absolutely superb.
Yeah. I mean, Paul and I have been trying to make a World War II movie together for ages. And that's actually how we met, is that we were going to do the Pegasus Bridge film together. So that may still happen one day, but that's a whole other stream.
Hopefully it does. Paul, I was going to ask you, like, just if you've got time, about a couple of the other projects that you've worked on over the years, because you've done a lot, like I was saying earlier.
A couple of little things.
Yeah, like it's basically every major movie over the past like 10 years, you've probably been involved in it. Like the Death of Stalin, I absolutely fucking love that movie. I think the cast is amazing, the performances are great, the dialogue's awesome. But like I was gonna ask you, you worked on Justice League, so the DC comic book movie. That turned out to be, I guess, like a real problem movie. Like it was reshot entirely with a whole new director. Yeah. Like, what was your experience of working on that?
Yeah, I mean, I did the what was it? I remember doing the opening credits when you see the burial for Superman. Like they were doing a memorial for Superman. They're all saluting, and I remember the director wanting to do a 21-gun salute. He went, "He wouldn't get a 21-gun salute. He got his when he got buried. This is just a memorial. He doesn't get another one, even if he's Superman." Yeah. mainly my stuff was, there was like the military camp where they were going to get Superman. They were going to go into this camp. I think, was it a camp or was it a spaceship? That was it, his spaceship. And it had all the military there. And so really mine is, it was very limited to what my involvement was. Any military, I was brought in. And that's really it. I mean, I was still quite early on in my career when I worked on that one. But it's the same as the Flash, when I did stuff on the Flash. Any military, the Russians, the Americans, when they did the alternative confrontation with the Americans and the Zorg or Zord, what his name is. But I mean, when I was doing the Flash, I was doing indie as well. So I was going indie Flash, and I did about 17 different projects in just that year alone.
Yeah.
So I was going from one to the other. So
well, yeah.
Like,
so yeah, you worked on Indiana Jones 5 as well. Obviously,
yeah.
That was another movie that like had its run at the box office, didn't do great. Was you just like relatively small scenes that you were there just
again, small scenes, German stuff, giving some German, but again, the director sometimes, the director, I remember saying about, well, what's the salutes, German saluting, and I needed to get a definitive on what's the score with the House of Mouse with the type of salutes, because you've got a guy who's a Nazi, and you've got and then there's the German soldier. You do want to give all the the different. I gave them, there's two different types of salutes for Germans. I don't know if you know that, for German soldiers back then. So obviously you've got the Nazi Party salute, and then you've got the normal salute, the soldier salute. But if a soldier was to walk in with no cap on, he would have to give that salute, even if he wasn't a member of the Nazi Party.
Okay.
So we had to make sure we got all that right. Was he going to wear a hat? Did Disney want that salute, or did he want just a normal soldier salute? And there's all those little things going on, but mainly it was just the action bit at the beginning with all the Germans, and then the Roman stuff as well.
It's funny you mentioned salutes. Like I remember back like 100 years ago when I was like an extra doing like a few war movies, I was asked to do like a salute as a British soldier during World War II, and like my first instinct was as that, and they said no, like British soldiers would go like that or something. Like they turn the hand upwards when they do it.
Longest way up, shortest way down.
And like I never would have thought that, because I'm so used to seeing American war movies where everyone just goes like that with the
or you got sailors that do it like that. So do I know the reason why sailors do it like that?
No. Yeah, well, why?
Historic, because the tar is to hide the tar from their hands from the officer.
Oh, really?
That's so that tar, pulling the ropes, all the tar that was in the ropes to stop it from perishing, their hands would be dirty, and then that's why they gave that salute. Napoleon, Napoleon, the French, they saluted there with a hand against the badge, because it was all to do with the palm. But the origin of salutes, and the reason why saluting as well, goes way back to the knights, where they used to raise up the lid before a joust.
And it was an expression of like respect to your opponent, wasn't it? To raise your visor towards them.
I mean, I remember selling Sam Mendes on 1917 about when he got Schofield saluting the officer with no cap on. I said, no, he would have a cap, he'd have his helmet on, he wouldn't just salute with no hat on. And then he went, oh no, I want to do that. But then he explained the reason why. He smacked the back of his head, he's lost his mate, he's run through this thing, and now he's trying to get this officer to listen to him, and he's in a panic, and he salutes. And then I went, okay, yeah, fine. So I mean, the Great Escaper, he gives two different salutes. He gives a naval salute, and then he gives a British Army salute, but he was actually a naval rating. But I wasn't there at that time. I only did the flashback scenes when they're actually at D-Day. I wasn't there when he was doing the salute. So sometimes a military advisor gets blamed for any inaccuracies in the film. We're not always there. We're not always in some of these things. So
I was surprised to learn that whole film was shot in the UK. About a guy going Great Escaper. The whole film was shot in the UK, including all the stuff in France and everything.
So all the D-Day stuff was shot at an airfield in Maidenhead, and I literally flew I flew from Montana. I just done Yellowstone, and I landed at Heathrow, got in my car, and then went straight to Maidstone, and then was filming that within an hour of landing. So I was doing World War I flashback scenes for Yellowstone, and then 2 days later I'm doing World War II flashback scenes.
I know the scenes you mean.
I did. I very much enjoyed 1917. I don't pretend to be an expert on military history for World War One, but it was interesting to get that perspective on it, like, because you're so used to like World War One movies just being a bunch of guys in a trench not moving anywhere, and so like that's the entire film. Like the one point where they go over the top is when they all get killed or whatever. But like this was a film where you get to see the full panorama of that war. You know, these guys making their way from like the rear trenches all the way to the front line, going through all the different areas that have been devastated by the war, and finally getting themselves to the point of attack where troops are going over the top. And it was fascinating to watch, and I think it was great to see just the full impact of all of that on these characters. Yeah, I guess. What did you think about that movie when you saw it get released? When you saw the finished version? Because I know you worked on it, obviously.
I mean, what was interesting? It showed different landscapes. Everyone just thinks of World War One, and they just think of they all believe that the whole of Europe was just one big muddy trench. Not understanding that actually there was, virgin territory, and that was what it was all about. They were crossing virgin territory that hadn't been peppered by artillery.
Yeah.
And I found out what my a relative actually died on the Advance at 1917. Not
really?
obviously that particular, because that's a fictitious thing, or fictitious part of World War. But no, I was happy with it. I mean, there's always little bits you see that that could have been done. You can't be. I mean, I'm on my own sometimes, and you've got 500 guys, and you can't be everywhere at once. Again, I was running up and down the trenches, making sure the guys are in the correct rank and the correct order. The Lewis guns are in the right place, and so on and so forth. That the trench cutters are in the right place. Again, you've got ADs, bless them. Sometimes they're running around like headless chicken because they want to impress the first AD, because the director's shouting in the first AD's head, and they're just picking anybody out and sticking them in. And I'm running up and down the trench again like a lunatic. What was good though is when that extra, who's in jail, I believe, that bumped into George.
Yeah.
He when he bumped into him, I remember when the director came out, Sam came out, and he went, "Oh, that was really good," but that guy bumped into him. And the first thing I said to him, I went, "Well, that's it. That's even better.
Yeah.
If you got some guy giving
it's
it
real.
scum down the line, someone's going to hit him." But one of the things I had to train the guys is how to hold their weapons, and I needed them to hold a weapon in a certain way, not because it was historically accurate, but because it was safe, because they all had bayonets on the end of their weapons. And it just took taken one guy just to strike that actor.
Yeah.
And that would have been Enga.
Yeah.
And so they had to hold him at a certain way. And I mean, when I first started that film, when I first started training the two cast members, George and Dean, George had just come off some show where he was playing a soldier in Afghanistan. And I was having to get it out of him, look, this is not an M4 rifle. You've got to hold it like a 303. And every now and again, I'd have to snap at him again because he was just like this again. I'm like, no, put it down there. Stop it. One of the first things, and the production didn't understand. It was not until the premiere, and I remember they were quite shocked when I told them. It's like one of the first lessons I gave the pair of them was about looking after their feet. And I explained that they're going to be running around all day in authentic boots. Their feet are not used to it. They're used to trainers. They're used to comfortable shoes. And they're going to be wet and muddy every day. If they get a blister, potentially that blister will then get infected.
Yeah.
And that will be endgame. And I explained, I said, I taught them how to look after their feet, how to identify hot spots. So I took them for a little run in the boots. And I said, right, can you identify hot spots in your feet? He goes, yeah, here. I said, right, you're going to take them up. From now on, you will take them up, you will powder them, and you'll put dry socks on. And after every take, you will take those boots off, you'll take those wet socks off, you will dry your feet, you'll powder them, put new socks on. I've got costume to make sure they had loads of socks. Because I explained that you get one blister, it will get infected because your boots, you just can't get out of it. It's muddy. It's like they constantly, and for Schofield, for George, sorry, to be able to do that run, he wouldn't be able to do it with blisters. And he had a very strict timeline again, with which that film had to be shot because of the weather, the cloud, the light. And if I hadn't taught him how to look after his feet, who knows? Been a lot of money down the drain.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until at the premiere and I spoke to them and Sam about it, and they looked a bit shocked and didn't realise. And that is what a military advisor does.
Yeah. If it's okay with you guys, there's quite a few super chats that have come in while we've been doing this. So some of them will be for like Paul or for History Bro or for Lance. So if it's all right with you guys, we'll go.
Yeah,
through
let me get some more quickly.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Nice. All right, let's do it.
I thought I was just gonna say, I thought
This is the life. This is the life of a military advisor. A hotel.
Yeah.
There's a shot of the bed.
Hey man, you're in like Morocco right now, okay, and you're getting loads of sun and it's lovely. So yeah, I'm not going to feel too much sympathy.
This year, I went to, where was it? I went to Latvia in January, then from Latvia to Malta to do another show, from Malta to Morocco to do a Guy Ritchie job, then to Turkey to do the Guy Ritchie job, then to Morocco to Turkey, then we had the strike, and then to Budapest, then Croatia, and then back to Malta, and I've hardly been home.
You've been on the grand tour, man. Just out of curiosity, like, how do you get into this? Like, how does a guy coming out of the military get into like being a military advisor for movies?
Pure chance. I didn't even plan it. I didn't even think about it. I got out. I was doing close protection. I was doing private. I was a private investigator doing surveillance. Doing something called penetration testing. Sounds a bit weird, but basically being paid to break into places and find
don't let Paul do that to you in the dark.
Yeah,
I can get into
penetration testing.
And then there was a bit of a lull because as veterans, you find it's very hard finding your feet, especially when you've been, in a service environment for a long time, and it is very hard. And as we know, there's a lot of guys that they can't handle it, and they unfortunately take their lives. So there was a very lean period, and I thought, right, this an advert came up. A friend sent, oh look, they want ex-soldiers for a film to play soldiers. And I remember the first thought I had was, why do I want to get back in uniform? I spent 24 years of my life trying to keep out of it. But I did it. It was a film called Monuments Men with George Clooney. And I was picked straight away to be the part of the core group as a sergeant. And then they asked me to do this feature. And I don't know if you remember the film. It's a feature of two guys that get out of a Land Rover, and John Goodman is holding this French guy that's been shot up. And it was all to do about the reality of war. It's supposed to be a bit of a light-hearted film. And obviously I must have that face for radio. And they picked me to be this guy that just looks deadpan at John Goodman. And they wanted us to drive right up to the wagon, get out and just look. And all I said was, can I make a suggestion? D-Day +4, Germans were still putting in ambushes. If you stop short and the two guys get out and survey the area and then maybe walk forward, it would look more realistic. And he just went, yeah, let's do that. And then we did it, shot it. George Clooney only takes 3 takes and then he moves on. And then I got pulled to one side by one of the other extras. And I remember the other guys by one of the ADs, I remember the other extras going, that's you, Sats, mate. And I was just like, no skill. And then he said, oh, look, you like the way you did that. Do you fancy working on something else? And I was like, yeah, okay. I didn't hear anything for a couple of months, and then I got a call to go down to Pinewood, and it was to help run the boot camps, do boot camp selection, and then run the boot camps for Fury. Now, I wasn't the advisor on it. A lot of people make the mistake that I was the advisor on it. I wasn't the advisor on it. I was an advisor for the extras.
There was about 20 advisors on that film, weren't there, Paul?
Well, no, you had one advisor for the cast, who was an ex-SEAL, but he just wanted to be an actor. And you had an advisor for the tanks. He was ex-Royal Tank Regiment. But there was no one for the extras. There was no one to train them, and you had a few. There were some reenactors that helped out.
Yeah, they did the Germans.
I did like that.
Kit Kat, he did that. Kit Kat, a good mate of mine from Free Para, from the same battalion. He runs a reenactment group. He did all the German side.
Yeah, he's done stuff for me. He's very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So I did. My introduction was a selection, and that was it, really.
I did like that movie in terms of like how fucking terrifying it was to take on a Tiger tank. Like nobody wanted to do it, and I think the general rule was you needed at least 3 Shermans to take on 1 Tiger, because you're probably going to lose at least 2 of them in the process of getting around it. And that is terrifying if you're a tank guy back in World War II, knowing that you've got like a 2 in 3 chance of getting killed when you're taking on a Tiger.
Well, the Firefly Firefly tank was the only thing that we had that could do anything against it at that time until we got the heavier ones in 45, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you could hit it from behind, but then it's all about maneuver, and it's just like those things were bunkers. They were just moving bunkers. They were almost impossible to knock out.
I was going to say on the Tiger, the frontal arm is quite different to the sides and the back. Yeah.
Well, it's funny as well because the Panther was very much built on the experience of the T-34s. When they encountered sloping armor, they were pretty much like, all right, that's a cool idea. We should just do that in our tanks as well. Hence, you got the Panther tanks. The Tiger wasn't like that. It didn't incorporate sloping armor, but it was so fucking thick and heavy, it didn't matter. Like, it was just like full-on brutal frontal armor.
Designed to have a very low silhouette on the horizon. That's why it was such a low body.
I was going to say, I did think 1970... sorry, Drinker. I was just going to say, just quickly go back one. I did think 1917 was very, very, very good. Did any of you guys see the remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, the German one?
Yeah.
I thought that was among the best World War I films I've ever seen.
Yeah, there was more war to it than 1917. 1917 was about a journey. It wasn't really a war film again. I don't know what it is, but I keep on being asked to do these things that are not full on war, which is pissing me off.
I'm trying, Paul. I
want more war. God damn it.
I wonder, Paul.
No, I thought it was good. Like it was.
Sorry, but I can't say about that. So
it played slightly fast and loose with World War I infantry tactics when you had flamethrower guys just like advancing straight into no man's land,
Call of Duty style.
Yeah, you wouldn't fucking do flamethrowers like that.
But again, it's spectacle. It's visual. It's color, and it's
brutal.
But it captured that essence of it, and like the just the tragedy of like the final day of the war. It's basically a war that's been lost, but we're going to mount one final offensive just for pride's sake, and men are sacrificing their life for nothing, absolutely nothing. The war is over, and that's the essence of World War I. Just the cheap cost of human life.
That, of course, it was supposed the armistice was supposed to kick in at 11 a.m. on the 11th of the 11th, but actually fighting was still happening way after that. Men died after 11 a.m. Well,
it takes a while for it to get there, to get the message through. Communication, lines of communication, and all that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was a good chat here. KV-1 stopped the Germans. No, the KV-1 wasn't very good. It was extremely heavy and extremely cumbersome and like quite easily knocked out. But it was the T-34 that really turned the battle on the Eastern Front. Yeah. Like that was the tank. It wasn't the best necessarily. It wasn't invincible, but there was so many of them because they were so easily to produce.
And very fast. It was very fast as well.
It was very fast. Yeah,
very maneuverable.
That's what kind of did it. And the sloping armor was an incredibly like smart solution to like a really simple problem, really. Like yeah.
Do
pretty
you
cool.
guys know The Chieftain? A channel called The Chieftain. He's like an ex-tanker, Irish dude, ex-tanker. It's a brilliant tank channel. But where I did a bit of content about the Eastern Front and the battles of Kursk, I did find out that if you get anything wrong on tank stuff, there's a lot of people out there ready to correct you very, very quickly.
Right.
What about the KV-1?
People, or just tanks in general. Tank nerds. They don't take any prisoners, so to speak. You get it wrong, they let you know about it quite quickly.
What I love about the KFC-1, it eventually morphed into the IS-2, which was fucking terrifying. Like, that thing was incredible. It had the hemispherical turret, which was basically impervious to everything because it was basically a dome. Like, that thing was brutal. But yeah.
So what is brutal is that's a uranium round going through a tank with crew in it.
Okay.
You know what happens?
Yeah,
it spalls, doesn't it? It spalls.
Everyone gets sucked out of
that hole. Yeah, because of the pressure, so it goes through the metal out the other side, and it takes all the crew with it.
Takes all the crew out.
I've heard stories, and I don't know if this is true, but like of German rounds passing straight through Soviet tanks during World War II, where like they would pass straight through the armor and they wouldn't kill anyone because like they just didn't happen to hit them. They just went straight through it because they had tungsten rounds that had armor piercing, and they would just go straight through.
That could happen.
I don't know if that's how true that is, but like I heard it in various written sources where you could get tanks where they would have multiple holes in them, essentially, like rounds had passed straight through them, but they didn't damage the inner workings of the tank, and so it could just carry on fighting as if nothing had happened. It's bizarre.
I could believe that's possible. Like the big Tigers, did they have like an 88? Was that their main thing? They actually had an 88 on it. On the side of a T-34 or something. Maybe it could happen.
It was a weird thing with the Tigers where it was like they found that 88 millimeter flat guns were really good at blowing up tanks because they were originally designed for shoot down aircraft, and they found out if they fired them like horizontally, they could take out tanks. Great. So the solution was like, okay, let's just put this gun in a tank, and then we've got the ultimate killing machine. The problem is they didn't have a tank that could incorporate a gun like that because the Panzer 3 and 4 were way too small. So they had to build a whole new one just around a gun. Yeah, and that was why you got the Tiger. Kind of a cool idea. It's just like this weird iterative process of like, okay, what's the gun that kills all the tanks? Okay, let's put this gun in a tank of our own. But we need to design one that can incorporate it. Fair enough.
I know you've got to get onto super chats, but I did have a question I wanted to ask Paul about one of his newer films, which has just had its premiere. If I can quickly, is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the movie Bakara. To use the shortened title for it. This is the one about the troop that goes into it's the Pakistani outfit that bashes its way through to the troops in Black Hawk Down.
All right, yeah.
And you were the military advisor on that, is that right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So was there any pushback? Was there any pushback with you being a sort of a person from out of country, as it were, working on a foreign language film that's depicting their forces? And was there any pushback?
Director wanted me.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, the director wanted me for it. Just the same as what's his name, the guy that the showrunner on Yellowstone. He wanted me.
So they didn't want to use someone from their own country. No, fair enough.
It was supposed to be. They wanted me there, but no. So they did have they had the Malaysian army that they helped. They helped with the Condors, which the armored vehicles they used. But what I was there to do as well is to stop them. They're obviously very patriotic to them, and it was only 3 years ago that the Americans finally admitted that actually, yes, you did save us. It is very interesting. I met some of the guys that were there at the time and had a good, very humble people. They've got no reason to bullshit. But yeah, there was times when on some of the scripts where it was going a bit. Oh yeah, we're great, and obviously the Americans are not. And I said, look, you've got to be balanced. Just be a bit balanced, and then I'd give them some suggestions. There's a classic one where those two guys, two enemy, and they suppressed them. And one guy they just wanted to go up to this bloke and just shoot him in the head. And I went, whoa, no, don't. Okay, you're supposed to be UN troops. If you do that, people will believe it. And then before you know it, there'll be news headlines about war crimes. So you've got to give this happy medium. I say, look, this guy is going for an AK and you're telling him not to, and then he just raises it. Then you can shoot him in the head. You're all right then. So, as a lot of things I do there, I tend to find I have more sway. I wouldn't say lower the budget, but I sometimes have a lot more sway with directors than I do on the higher budget things.
I'll drop the IMDb for that film in the chat so people can see what we're talking
It's a good.
about.
I tell you what, I think it'll be going on Netflix. It did really well out in Malaysia.
Yeah,
the trailer looks big national.
The trailer looks good.
Here's the.
There's some corny things in it. There's some corny things in it, which I know that's dialogue, very corny stuff. But the action side of it is really good. And they had me play one of the Delta Force commander. In there with a really
nice
crappy American accent, which they kept. I thought they would have dubbed over that, they didn't.
I wanted this one as well. Why did Napoleon fail to gather some tanks for the decisive battles? He couldn't afford them. Clearly, he would have. We could have had tanks at Waterloo. It would have been fine.
I'm sure he would have airdropped a few. Maybe airdropped a few anti-tank guys in. Who knows?
They were just too damn expensive.
Try to get it in.
Yeah. Let me do a couple of super chats here.
Yeah.
Northern English Bastard says Napoleon was unintentionally hilarious. I kept expecting the Riff Tracks guys to show up, cracking jokes, a waste of what could have been a great epic biopic. I mean, you're not entirely wrong, but RRTNZ says, great to see you doing happy hours again. Not sure if Napoleon is worthy. Agreed with your assessment, a massive waste of potential, except for Chuck Norris's cameo as the British infantry squares.
We'll be covering that in our review of the 1996 Napoleon, I think.
Chuck Norris just played the entire British army. Strigloff says, if you truly want to see the scale and scope of 1800s battlefields brought to life, then might I suggest people watch the Russian 4-part adaptation of War and Peace. Same director as Waterloo, but that one pales in comparison. Damn.
I think that's free on YouTube to watch, or it certainly was at some point. It's got epic battles. Again, extras there for minimal pay, I would imagine. But it's got some impressive.
Probably the same Russian extras.
I mean,
probably
they're probably happy.
Probably is. They was in their 3-year conscription.
Yeah.
I
imagine they were more happy to do a movie than they were just doing basic infantry maneuvers and training exercises and stuff. So we get to have some fun. Seems like it'd be more enjoyable than what they normally do. TK Magic Shop says, yeah, that's true. TK Magic Shop says Kathleen Kennedy does not approve. Oh, I'm not surprised. If Napoleon was a bisexual woman, then it would have been fine. Then she would have approved. Yoshi says oversimplified version of Napoleon on YouTube is way more entertaining, informative, and enjoyable. Okay. Napoleon simplified. Ryan says Ridley Scott's grotesque distortion of Napoleon's character is terrible. It's defamatory and highly inaccurate. No man who came from minor Corsican Tuscan nobility, not speaking French until he was 10, could succeed to such heights being a petulant baby. I mean, I guess that is an interesting reflection of the movie. The film doesn't pull any punches when it comes to Napoleon, not as a general, but just as a man, as a person. He's quite under the thumb with Josephine a lot of the film. Well, I don't know how you guys feel about that.
One thing I would say is, having read more than one biography and having read around the topic for years and years and all sorts of angles, Napoleon would have been an extremely charismatic person when he wanted to be. He could be obviously extremely cold and down the line and everything, but when he wanted to be, he could command absolute loyalty and things. And we just didn't get that with Joaquin Phoenix in this film. They chose. It must have been an artistic decision to not show that. And well, it is what it is. They went with what they went with.
The next one is MLG says, "Hi Drinker, have you watched Blue Eye Samurai?" Yeah, I'm 2 episodes in already. I'm just starting episode 3. Absolutely fucking loving it. That show is brilliant. The main character is so interesting. The animation is absolutely gorgeous. Love it.
Yeah,
love it so far. So
yeah,
thank
Paul,
you.
that's one for you to watch when you've got insomnia. It's on Netflix. So
Right.
I
I had to
recommend
watch
it.
I had to watch Lord of War last
Oh,
night. So.
What, the movie?
Nicolas Cage.
The
Lord-
Nick-
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one.
Dare we ask why you had to watch that? Is that connected to
Yeah.
a job?
That's what I'm going to say.
I had a feeling.
Oh, I
that
slipped
was
that one in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice one.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Big Day K says, "Speaking of epic films, a recommendation for Drinker recommends Once Upon a Time in the West. If you haven't seen it yet, remedy this immediately." I have seen it and it's very good.
Yeah, I've got the DVD of that.
The Darvatar says, "Maybe I was wrong for expecting this, but I wanted a movie about Napoleon and the revolution, such a consequential event that affected the great powers, shaking the very foundations of Europe." You got little tiny elements of it, but again, it's just the movie skims over it so quickly. I want to see that 4-hour cut where we get more of this stuff. I'm assuming it's there.
Just a little interesting. Just thinking about about the what you said about the revolution. The little fun fact. So the guys I trained when I had my boot camp, it was at Cavalry Barracks in Hounslow. I don't know if you know of it.
No.
So it was a barracks that was set up in 1793 because of the French Revolution.
Oh, wow.
It's just outside of London. And it was set up because the British government decided they needed to have a garrison close just in case the locals started getting ideas about their station because of what was happening in France. And it's actually, the last battalion was the Irish Guards. And obviously the MOD then sold it. It was being used by film companies. It's now been sold off to make plush flats. And the parade ground was used to train men for the Battle of Waterloo. And
Wow.
the last guys to march on it, the last full body of men to march on it and pass off the square were my guys for the Battle of Waterloo. And I gave them that little speech to let them know that even though whatever the history and the way the history is being portrayed, at least you guys are a part of this history leading on to that film. So that was a little...
That is a hell of a
fun
thing
fact
for them. For those guys to experience that as well. Like, how did they react to that?
It resonated with them a bit, and some of them were actually teary-eyed when I told them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been like doing the German speech at the end of Band of Brothers. You know, it's like, here's a bit of history for you to underscore the resonance.
And History Bro looks like he's on Wikipedia, like...
Yeah, sort of look at this.
Or he may have frozen. He may have frozen because that's a standard.
Yeah,
stance.
wave your hand if you're with us, History Bro.
He blinked. He blinked.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, he's
sorry, I was looking at the chat. Sorry.
Oh, right. I thought he was on Wikipedia there checking it out. Is he right?
Yeah.
It's very active.
Jordan Pendragon says, "Regardless of the outcome of the film, I'm still mightily impressed that directors like Scott or Eastwood continue making films in the 80s and 90s. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
How fit was he on set? I mean, how animated and how much energy did he have?
Very fit. I mean, you wouldn't think he was 86.
He doesn't look it. He doesn't look it.
No, he's got his pad, he's drawing, he's doing all his own storyboards. He's got his pencil set and he's doing the whole lot. You know, he's doing the storyboards, he's working on another film, he's doing and he's controlling, he's painting the picture of each frame of 10 maybe to 11 cameras, and he's painting each frame and making sure everything's correct. I remember it was quite a funny moment with he wanted me to get some armorer. There's a bit when he's in Toulon and he pulls a tarp back and there's all these rusty cannons, and he said, "Oh, get me some overweight guy to be the armorer." And I said, "None of my guys are overweight." And he went, "Really?" I said, "No, they've all had to pass the selection. They're all very fit guys." And then he just came out with, "Can you touch your toes?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Come on then, let's touch your toes." And it was a touch your toe competition. with Ridley Scott to see who can touch the toes. And I remember looking at him and went, I ain't falling for that one. Who's stood behind me? And then I had all the producers went, go on then, touch your toes, touch your toes. And so both of us were doing this stretch. And he just smashed it out straight away. And obviously I had a little bit of a struggle because I'm taller than him. And then he went, yoga. You need to do yoga, Paul. Start doing yoga. But fit as a fiddle. You know, and,
I
you know,
can't believe that. Like,
he ain't slowing down.
If I imagine myself at 86, I probably would be in a
Man.
coffin. But like, you know, you think at that age you just want to retire and just enjoy yourself, relax in life, just be a man of leisure. But like to still be making movies, it's incredibly impressive because that whole process must take a lot out of you. It must be stressful. It must be difficult.
I can
And-
vouch.
Yeah,
When
like
you
Lance,
think
like
about
you're a
it,
young
things-
man still, and like doing that when you're like 30, 40 years from now. Imagine that.
Yeah, it's you know, if you suffer from insomnia by day 4 of filming, you're usually off to sleep pretty quickly. But you know what they say, you're as young as the woman you're with, and I've seen Ridley's wife, and she is gorgeous. Don't forget that she's Maximus's wife in Gladiator. That is Ridley Scott's wife in real life.
Very nice. Very nice.
She's a stunning
nice
woman,
girl.
and yeah, I've heard she's an absolutely lovely woman as well. So he ended up with a real good one there, and I think that probably says a lot for his life.
Okay. There's still hope for me then, because he's like a Scottish guy as well. So yeah, I can...
I'm sure there's hope for you, mate.
All right. Next one is Desert Ranger says Fallout 1 and 2 and Fallout New Vegas have the best stories ever created, and I just want to know your thoughts, Drinker, if you ever review them. And if you want more information about the Fallout New Vegas, but it's Genius by H. Bomber Guy. Yeah, I mean, I played the Fallout games, like Fallout 3 and 4, definitely. And I love the universe. I love the mythos around it. It's great stuff. I haven't... Yeah, I played Fallout New Vegas as well, actually. I don't know if I played it all the way to the end, but it's...
I've played it. I've played it all the way to the end, and I was on that, like, for 10, 12 hours stretch, only leaving the house to go and buy food.
When you venture out into the wasteland and like for the first time and you see it, it's just what a cool world they created.
There's all these subplots. Do you know what? If they made a historical World War II open world RPG like that, where your one guy could influence the little bits of a really big battle, let's just say Normandy, and you parachuted in, that would be a massive seller.
What about Sniper Elite 5?
No, Sniper Elite 5 is close to that. But if they did the whole of Normandy, I know you're him. Yeah, that's it. You're looking at...
That's a bucket list.
Yeah. And I think you helped them with some of the weapon tests as well, didn't you? With the sound recordings.
No. That was I didn't do that. No, that was God, I forgot his name now.
But they modelled the character.
Mine was more about
you.
Yeah, mine was more about the mission. Some mission ideas, killing ideas, and then I was training the motion capture artist, and then they asked, "Oh, could you do it? Because you just move naturally." So then I end up putting on the old gimp suit and jumping about everywhere. And
I've just finished playing it. Literally, I just finished playing the single.
I gave them ideas about bullet deflection as well, to say, look, bullets deflect off bone, and sometimes they'll go in there and then come out your backside and just travel straight down the body. So I gave them ideas about bullet deflections. It's like generally killing people and the best ways to do it. Which,
it was a good game.
Very creative ideas.
I want a bigger one. I want a bigger World War II game like that, and that be the biggest seller of all time, I reckon, if they did a big RPG like that.
Yeah.
Gabriel Caro says, Drinker, have you seen Godzilla -1 yet? Are you planning on making a review of it? Is it it's so good and the hype is deserved? It just doesn't come out here in the UK until like the 15th, so I haven't had a chance to see it yet. But I'm very much looking forward to it because damn, that looks like a good movie. And it was made on a budget of $15 million. Like
Hollywood take note.
Half what it cost to make one episode of fucking She-Hulk. I know which one I'd rather watch, that's for sure. Night King 1 says this film is clearly chopped up to oblivion. 4.5 hours down to 2.5 hours. So scenes just cut and end with no finish, and battles are glossed over, and the War of the Fifth Coalition is skipped over entirely. you're right. It is.
Do we know if the longer cut's going to be 4.5 hours or 4 hours? Because I've heard a couple of different things. Do you know, Paul?
I don't know. All I know, there was loads missing. There's stuff I thought, hang on, why is that missing? Why is this missing? And there's some real good stuff as well, So I can't even say if things are definitely going to be in there, but I just know there's just so much missing. There's so much good stuff. That's why I said, like, when I walked out, I was sort of like, oh, is that the extended trailer?
Yeah, it's like sometimes I guess you've just got to hang your head and just be like, yeah, okay, we did our best with this one. It's on the director.
Well, that's what you can do. I mean, like, I think a lot of people have the misconception that a military advisor somehow owns the film. Don't.
Yeah, it's like you didn't direct the fucking thing.
Your job is to advise. Your job is to advise. It's not my train set.
I'm there to ride. Yeah. I'll just say, look, I offer solutions, and it's then up to the people that make those decisions whether they take them or not. But you can't stamp your feet and say, no, it's got to be like this. Because they'll be like that. Yeah, cheers, mate. Off you go. If because you're just being disruptive. You got to know there's a balance. There's a happy medium that you've got to be able to. Yeah, you've got to be a good politician in some ways, and you've got to learn some of the ways of the force to try and edge a good decision a bit closer, to reality. But you're never going to get anything 100% correct.
Yeah, because you had a problem with someone bullying somebody on the set, didn't you? Wasn't it?
So there was someone. Well, no, that's the other part of my job. It's looking after extras, and you get some disruptive extras as well, who think they're like the spokesperson for it, but they want to moan about every single thing. And there was an extra who was being bullied, and I had to deal with that as well. And so there's lots of other things, the welfare issues of those guys. It's like it's your battalion. You got to deal with all that, and plus my instructors. And like, say, Waterloo, one of my guys, Romano, I always rib him for it. He halfway through Waterloo, he had to go. He went off to the Ukraine for the obvious reasons. He said, like, he phoned me up on Saturday. He went, Paul, I've got to go. I went, okay, cheers. And because of budgets, that was it. I was on my own. I couldn't bring anyone on, so I was literally on my own, running 500 men, cannons, and everything else, and running backwards and forwards and trying to get everything as much as I could in order, and try to get guys in the right sort of structure, the structure of the armies, all on my own, and I can only be one place at once.
Yeah,
that's the nature of the job.
Yeah.
Son of Sean says, when I was watching Bo cover this on Lotus Eaters, I did think, we've got to take this show on the road to Drinkers Channel. Let's go. Well, there we go. We're here right now. Thank you. Loki98 says, I want to recommend the Danish movie Riders of Justice, modern movie with a strong but flawed male lead, Mads Mikkelsen, dark and serious, but with some light comedy and a dark twist at the end. Okay, Riders of Justice.
I've seen it. It's a good movie. Different, but I think you'll like it.
Quark says the 1993 German movie Stalingrad was very good. Yes, it was very fucking good. Stalingrad was an excellent movie.
Yeah.
OMG Puppies. I would say actually watch that and Das Boot. It's like you get a German perspective on the war.
That's a heavy double bill right there.
It is, but it's a really fucking good one.
I've seen both of them at the cinema too.
OMG Puppies says the advantage of depleted uranium, which is the same density as tungsten, is the round melts and ignites inside the tank. Uranium is more flammable than magnesium. Well, I mean, that's fair enough. Yeah, you're probably going to kill everyone on board the tank. In that case, I don't think. Well, depleted uranium wasn't available in World War II. I would imagine like that just wasn't a thing that they even knew existed back then. So tungsten was your go-to material. Melvin Deeply says, for the whole panel, who would you have chosen to play Napoleon if you could pick anyone?
I know what my answer is going to be. Well, I mean, it's obvious. It's got to be Danny DeVito.
Naturally, yeah.
No, a serious answer to that. That's a good question. A French actor, I would have gone for.
Yeah,
I might have chosen Mads Mikkelsen, possibly. I think he could have brought that gravitas to the role. I think he maybe has the look for it. If you get him in the uniform and everything, yeah, that probably might have been my choice. I don't think Joaquin Phoenix was a bad choice. That's the thing. Like, I think he's a great actor.
He is. Yeah, I think there's a lot of competing elements going on with the film that didn't serve him well, maybe. But I probably would have cast a young Vincent Cassel when he was younger. He would have been good. He might be a bit too tall, but he would have been good. I'm not sure about Warwick Davis.
Yeah, he's quite tall.
Davis, yeah. I like this one as well. The modern solution: Tessa Thompson as Napoleon. Yeah, sure, okay. Yeah.
I think we lost History Bro because his battery on his laptop.
I think that was pretty much dying. But
he may jump back on, but we'll see.
Well, I think we're at the end of the super chats anyway, and yeah, if he pops back in, I'll bring him back on. But otherwise, I want to say, Paul, really appreciate you taking the time to come on and do this live stream. It's been fascinating, like listening to your insights about how this film was made and a lot of the other movies that you've done. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
That's all right. No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, Paul, great to have you back again, mate. And appreciate you listening to my suggestion that it would be good to come over here and let your voice be heard by a much wider spectrum of people. And got to wish you good luck on the stuff you're working on right now, which we can't talk about, of course.
God, yeah, too. Sorry. Anyway, I'm not going to say anything. Well,
I'm working on Day of the Jackal as well.
Another Day of the Jackal movie.
It's a mini. No, it's a mini series. I think it's like
okay.
6-part. I've got a couple of friends working on it. Everybody's got really good.
I love
vibes.
the Edward Fox.
I do.
Back in the day, not so much
yeah.
the Bruce Willis one. That was a bit shit, but like, it's such a good story.
It's quite funny because I was training Amelia Fox only 2 years ago to do the same iconic scene when she's putting this weapon together. She plays an MI6 agent, and now all of a sudden I'm working on the new one.
That is pretty cool. I want to say as well, like, Lance, thank you for helping to set this up tonight and bringing Paul in. Like, I really appreciate it, mate. You are a fucking legendary mod on my channel, and I've been lucky enough to meet up with you a few times and like go for a few pints with you. It's been an absolute pleasure every time I've done it, man. You are a fucking legend.
Really appreciate it.
For everyone who's watching this, if you're not subscribed to Lance's channel already, the Outcast Creative, the link is in the description. Please do if you've got the opportunity. Like, let's see if we can get up to 3,000 subscribers, because Lance really works his fucking arse off with his content that he produces. He does loads of industry interviews with guys who have worked on like a whole bunch of shows, from like Game of Thrones to like war movies, like everything. And he's producing some really good stuff. So if you get the opportunity, please give him a subscribe.
There's a great interview with Paul on there that we did a year ago, and where we talk about a whole plethora of other topics. And I was trying to get him to talk about Napoleon, and he was refusing to be interrogated. It's quite fun. But so now we've got the sequel to that, effectively. But yeah, he's a great guest to have on any time, and I hopefully one day look forward to working with him. That window is starting to narrow a little bit, but hopefully it will happen.
Same goes for Bo from History Bro. I know you're part of Lotus Eaters, and you guys are obviously like absolutely crushing it right now. And thank you for coming back on for this, man. It's always good to like hook up with you and cover like historical warfare stuff. It's great fun, man. So thank you for doing this.
No. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. It really is. Whenever you want me back on, if ever you want to talk about history, films, or anything at all, I'm always happy to do it. And if you want to come on Lotus Eaters, just say the word. I'll have you on in a second. But no, thanks for having it. It's been a pleasure to meet Lance and Paul. Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate your insight on some of these things. Genuinely learned a couple of things this evening. So, no, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, History Bro, I'll have to talk to you about the Pegasus Bridge movie that I nearly made at some point off camera. We'll have a chat about that.
Yeah, can do.
Nice.
Cheers.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to my awesome mods that have done their usually amazing work. And thank you to everyone that sent us super chats and that's got involved in the chat. Like, holy shit. One of my dogs even started moving. Like,
yeah.
You know, it's an important thing when that happens. But yeah, thank you guys. And that's all we've got for today. So go away now.